Recording in progress.
Okay, so this week we're going to be, even though it's labeled Second Chronicles Part 14, it's actually we're going to be in First Chronicles chapter 25 today. Did I say Second Samuel Part 14, but we're in First Chronicles. So chapter 25. The reason being is we're at that point where it's towards the end of David's reign. He's aging, he's getting older, he's preparing for his son to take over. Of course, we know that'll be Solomon, but we'll find out shortly, a couple of weeks, we'll find out that it doesn't go as smoothly as they expected. Well, as they expect, maybe not as, maybe it's going just exactly the way we did. But today last week we ended with David's making preparations for the temple, getting all the materials together for his son Solomon, and then breaking down the at the very end, it talked about how he was dividing the priests, the Levites, into their different categories. Well, today we go into the specifics of all that. And so, again, this is part of those boring things that, if you ever try to read through the Bible, if somebody who tries to read through the Bible from cover to cover, they usually get bogged down somewhere around numbers because that's a lot of what's in there. It's just a lot of number redundancy and boring stuff. Well, we're kind of to that point in our story. A lot of names.
I go to sleep.
Yeah, there's a lot of names. And so I do ask for your forgiveness, even with my skill at figuring out how to pronounce them. It doesn't always work that way. So, and I find some of the names funny because, as they're anglicized Hebrew names. And so they don't always translate very nice into westernized English. As opposed to an Easternized English, so let me go ahead and share our screen here. We're in First Chronicles chapter 25. Of course, I don't want to lie, so let me double check that. I don't want to intentionally lie. First Chronicles 25. Okay. And verse 1. David and the officers of the army also set apart for the service the sons of Asaph, and of He-Man. Boy, who knew He-Man was in the Bible? And of Jeduthun, who should prophesy with lyres, harps, and cymbals. The list of those who did the work and of their duties was of the sons of Asaph: Zachar, Joseph, Nethaniah, and Azarela, sons of Asaph, under the direction of Asaph, who prophesied under the direction of the king. Of Jeduthun, the sons of Jeduthun: Gedaliah, Zeri, Jeshiah, Shimei, Hashabiah, and Mattathiah, 6, under the direction of their father Jeduthun, who prophesied with the lyre in thanksgiving and praise to the Lord. Of He-Man, by the power of Grayskull. That's a cartoon back in the 80s. Of He-Man, the sons of He-Man: Bukiah, Mattaniah, Uzziel, Shebuel, and Jeremoth, Hananiah, Hanani, Eliathah, Yadalti, and Romamti-Ezer, Joshbekashah, Malothi, Hothir, Mahaziel. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Gesundheit. So I want to point out a couple of things. Number one, David and the officers of the army, they're the ones divvying up all this. Why do you think that is?
Set apart for the service.
To keep control of things.
Well, yes, definitely to keep control. There's probably a lot of Levites passing through doing this. We have to remember that in modern society, that's bad. Let me try this from a different direction. Here in the United States, we don't govern based on religion. Our government is not religiously based. There's a separate, I know everybody. Yeah. But there's a separation of church and state. There's no state religion, if you will. There's not supposed to be. Okay. But we have over in the Middle East caliphates and emirates, which are they are religiously ordered. The government and the religion are the same. They work together, supposedly. Well, the same
Iran
thing.
is-
What's that?
Iran is.
Right.
The Ayatollah.
Mhm. So, but the same thing was in place then, even more so because most nations were established with a national god. They were religiously ordered. And so David, being anointed by God, is a representative of God. The military leaders that David appointed would therefore be appointed by God. And so it just goes to show how religion and state were meshed together, that the military officers would be the one assisting in the division of priestly duties. Okay, so that's how that goes. And then the other comment here, prophesying with lyres, harps, and cymbals. Music can aid in prophesying. Now, keep in mind, prophesying has a lot of different elements to it. It's not just future telling. Future telling is just a itty bitty segment of it. A prophet had 4 specific functions. Number one, they were the messenger of God. They were the voice of God. So they could bring a message to the context. They could be a judge. They could serve. They were a messenger between nations. And then the fourth, they were fortune tellers or future tellers. So there's itty bitty things that the future telling was just a very small aspect of that. Mainly, it was giving the people the message of God. That was their main function. So knowing what prophecy is, mainly giving the message of God, this is dictating that the message of God could also be proclaimed through you. So a lot of the Psalms that we read, if you read the little bylines at the top, the headings at the top, a Psalm of David or a Psalm of Asaph, which we see here. There's even a couple of Psalm of Heman. So they are there. Okay. So just some of these names are going to be familiar later on. They're going to sound. Okay. So we'll go on. Verse 5, all these were the sons of Heman, the king's seer, according to the promise of God to exalt him. For God had given Heman 14 sons and 3 daughters. They were all under the direction of their father for the music in the house of the Lord with cymbals, harps, and lyres for the service of the house of God. Asaph, Jeduthun, and Heman were under the order of the king. They and their kindred, who were trained in singing to the Lord, all of whom were skillful, numbered 288. And they cast lots for their duties, small and great, teacher and pupil alike. So Heman was gifted by God with the ability to feel music, or in today's language, he would be a maestro. So yeah, he's got 14 sons and 3 daughters. Man, how would you?
Were they
Right?
all from the same one?
It's like the Von Trapp family.
Probably.
Feel sorry for that one.
Probably not, but you never know. Right, it's a very gifted family. Just to start with, they're musically inclined, and I compare them to the Von Trapps. So, but you're right. And then all of a sudden, they immediately got a 288 piece choir. Man, we need to go find Asaph, Jeduthun, and Heman. See if we can get a choir. Okay, verse 9. The first lot.
Are
A
you
lot of
gonna read all of this?
Yep. I think it's important.
Really?
Yep.
We'll go to sleep.
The first lot fell for Asaph to Joseph, the second to Gedaliah, to him and his brothers and his sons 12. The third to Zachar, his sons and his brothers 12. The fourth to Isri, his sons and his brothers 12. The fifth to Nethaniah, his sons and his brothers 12. The sixth to Bukiah, his sons and brothers 12. The 7th to Jezreelah, his sons and his brothers 12. The 8th to Jeshaiah, his sons and brothers 12. The 9th to Mattaniah, his sons and his brothers 12. The
What are
10th
12 what?
they're breaking up the groups of musicians.
They're breaking up this 288 into,
Correct. So you end up with 24 groups of 12.
okay.
The 10th to Shimei, his sons and brothers 12. The 11th to Azarel, his sons and brothers 12. The 12th to Hashabiah, his sons and brothers 12. To the 13th, Shemuel, his sons and brothers 12. To the 14th, Mattathiah, his sons and brothers 12. And the 15th to Jeremoth, his sons and brothers 12.
If we were in court, I would say, you're going to say, acknowledges that that's a fact and not have to go through.
Yeah, well, like I said, some of it can be, but
All right.
I've got it as a part of this and I got it
All
over
right.
time. So.
That's another part of family tradition.
This is why people get frustrated with reading the Bible all the way through, is they get to points like this and they don't know whether it's okay to read it or okay to skip. So, and so they just stop. To the 16th, to Hananiah, his sons and brothers 12. To the 17th, to Joshua Kashah, his sons and brothers 12. To the 18th, Hananiah, his sons and his brothers 12. To the 19th, to Malathi, his sons and brothers 12. To the 20th, to Eliathai, his sons and brothers 12. To the 21st, to Hophir, his sons and brothers 12. To the 22nd, to Gadalti, his sons and brothers 12. To the 23rd, to Mahaziah, his sons and brothers 24th, to Romam Ezer, his sons and his brothers 12. Okay. As for the divisions of the gatekeepers of the Korahites. Now, Korah, if you remember, the Korahites, that was one division of the Aaron, of Aaron's sons. I'm trying to remember. There was a original group of Aaron that was in charge, but they sinned, and so that was taken away. That role of priest was taken away from them. The Korahites became the lead group in that now. But as far as gatekeepers, so these are all Levites, of which Aaron was a part of. Of the Korahites, Meshelemiah, son of Korah, the son of Asaph. Meshelemiah had sons: Zechariah the firstborn, Jediel the second, Zebediah the third, Jathniel the fourth, Elam the fifth, Jehonim the sixth, Elihoenai the seventh. Obed-Edom had sons: Shemaiah the firstborn, Jehoshaphat the second, Joah the third, Sakkar the fourth, Nathanael the fifth, Amiel the sixth, Issachar the seventh, Pulathiah the eighth. For God blessed him. That's kind of funny that it would stop and say that. Pulathiah. So anybody know of anybody who's named their kid Pulathiah lately?
Not like,
Because that was a blessed name. And to his son Shemaiah, sons were born to exercise authority in their ancestral houses. So these are going to be the leaders of the groups, for they were men of great ability. The sons of Shemaiah: Ophni, Raphael, Obed, and Elzabad, whose brothers were able men: Elihu and Semachiah. All these sons of Obed-Edom, with their sons and brothers, were able men qualified for the service. 62 of Obed-Edom. Meshelemiah had sons and brothers, able men, 18. Hosa of the sons of Merari had sons: Shimri the chief, for though he was not the firstborn, his father made him chief. How often have we seen that? Hilkiah the second, Tebaliah the third, Zechariah the fourth. All the sons and brothers of Hosa totaled 13.
Obed-Edom is not an Edomite.
No, it's a name.
Okay.
These guys,
But
these are all gatekeepers.
those were gatekeepers, yeah.
How many gates are there?
4, the north, south, east, and west. And you're going to see that when they divide them up, that the east gate is the most important one because it has more gatekeepers.
Okay.
So, yeah. When we get to how the temple is set up, some of this will make sense. It'll make more sense because we'll watch a video and show it from the different angles. So it'll make a little more.
They've even got a gate.
And the gates were not sponsored. You know, they didn't have corporate sponsors, so you don't have the Coca-Cola gate or anything like that. Yeah, the video will probably cut out right then on YouTube. But that's these divisions of the gatekeepers, corresponding to their leaders, had duties, just as their kindred did, ministering in the house of the Lord. And they cast lots by ancestral houses, small and great alike, for their gates. The lot to the east fell to Shelemiah, that cast lots also for his son Zechariah, a prudent counselor, and his lot came out to the north. Obed-Edom's came out to the south, to his sons was allotted the storehouse. Their Shupam and Hosed came out to the west, at the gate of Shalakah on the ascending road. Guard corresponded to guard, meaning they were paired up and they always worked together in that same pairing. On the east, there were 6 Levites each day. On the north, 4 each day. On the south, 4 each day, as well as 2 and 2 at the storehouse. And for the colonnade on the west, there were 4 at the road and 2 at the colonnade. There were these were the divisions of the gatekeepers among the Korahites and the sons of Merari. So there are 6 guards on the east side, but 4 guards on each of the other gates. And why do you think that would be?
Their enemies were more to the east.
No,
No?
no. It's where the sun rose. That's where God entered the kingdom through light. The east, sun rose in the east. So, but nice try. That was great. That was great.
Well,
And of the Levites, Ahijah had charge of the treasures of the house of God and the treasures of the dedicated gifts. The sons of Laden, the sons of the Gershonites belonging to Laden, the heads of families belonging to Laden the Gershonite, Jehieli. This ends a little strange there because it doesn't make any sense. We think there was something that was left out or mistranslated or when the scribes would copy these down, maybe they skipped a line. We don't know anything about Jehieli it just stops right there. Anyway, for that section. Then we get into the rest of it. The sons of Jehieli, Zethan and his brother Joel, were in charge of the treasures of the house of the Lord. Of the Amramites, the Israelites, the Hebronites, and the Uzzielites, Shemuel, son of Gershom, son of Moses, was chief officer in charge of the treasury. His brothers from Eliezer, were his son Rehabiah, his son Jeshiah, his son Joram, his son Zikri, and his son Shelomoth. The Shelomoth and his brothers were in charge of all the treasures of the dedicated gifts that King David and the heads of the families and the officers of the thousands and the hundreds and the commanders of the army had dedicated. From booty won in battles, they dedicated gifts for the maintenance of the house of the Lord. Also, all that Samuel the seer and Saul son of Kish and Abner son of Ner and Joab son of Zeruiah had dedicated. All dedicated gifts were in the care of Shelomoth and his brothers. So we kind of get an idea of how the military fits in with the state religion and stuff, in that all the booty that the military took, it seems to imply or indicate or imply in some degree that they were to present these gifts to the priests for dedication, and those that were deemed available for use within the tabernacle would be kept for that use, is what it seems to indicate. So okay. Are we bored yet?
No,
Those who answer, I know you're not. Those who don't answer, I have to make sure you're not asleep.
if you read it 4 times, can you get a certificate of being bilingual?
Not bilingual. Yeah, I speak Bible. Yeah.
I believe it.
Of the Israelites, Chenaniah and his sons were appointed to outside duties for Israel as officers and judges. Remember, judging began at the gates. So this is what that means.
okay, what verse are you on there?
Verse 29. But into verse 30. Of the Hebronites, Hashabiah and his brothers, 1,700 men of ability, had the oversight of Israel west of the Jordan for all the work of the Lord and for the service of the king. Of the Hebronites, Jerijah was chief of the Hebronites. In the 40th year of David's reign, search was made of whatever genealogy or family, and men of great ability among them were found with Jazer and Gilead. So the Hebronites, it seems that at some point disappeared or were overtaken in some form. So it gives this note that in the last year of David's reign, that a search was made for some Hebronites, and they found some, and they were men of great ability, and they were in Gilead. So, King David appointed him and his brothers, 2,700 men of ability, heads of families, to have the oversight of the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of the Manassites for everything pertaining to God and for the affairs of the king. So David here is setting up the legal centers, the courts, is what is going on. And it's funny that he would appoint Hebronites over the Reubenites, Gadites, and the half tribe of the Manassites. But it's not really funny because look where they are. Reuben and Gad and Manasseh. Now Manasseh kind of went here. So you've got Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, a half tribe of Manasseh. They're all on the east side of Jordan.
Okay.
So what it's doing is it's setting up the Hebronites to take charge of any judicial action, any court function on the east side of the Jordan. And that's where those three tribes are. So
How much was it like, how many miles?
I think the length is probably around 225, somewhere in there. Yeah, it in the grand scheme of things, it's not very large, but it's large enough for people who, mainly walk on foot. As if you walk on any other, walk on your hands or something. So yeah, so we finished First Chronicles 26, and that's it for today. We went through that really quick. So
Wow.
the reason being is next week it's going to kind of be a little bit of the same. I didn't want to really get too far.
Skip this one.
Well, I don't want to skip it.
You like reading all those names.
Well, kind of.
Well, you
but-
do a good job of reading it all.
But
As long as you don't give.
right. Well, next week we get into the military area representatives and successory plans for the temple. So today we set up the Levitical order, if you will, at least the leadership of the Levitical order. They set up the court system, the legal system. Next week they're going to set up the military, how it's going to function within the religious state, the area representatives, so their representative government, successor and plans for the temple.
But why is
This
this
for
important?
Solomon.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to answer hers first.
Go ahead.
Because I hear yours. It's important because some of these names play a large role later on. When Solomon becomes
Your word for that.
okay, let me ask. Do you think the Bible is important?
Yeah.
Okay. How many of the stories that we've read about David, even as a young man and growing up as king and through his whole reign, how many of those stories had you not heard?
There was some.
There were some, and it's because our mindset is that, well, this is important, but this isn't. I tell you that all of it is important. Even these little details, the writer or the editor, the compiler that way has put this in such a way that it was important for the first readers to read it. It was important for it to be put down as a personal scholar. I also consider it. Now
Because it was done for the Israelites, so that they would know. You read all.
Yeah.
I mean, really,
The
they
first,
should have been the
right.
only ones really concerned about this.
At this point,
things.
right, at this point, the idea of non-Jewish people getting the blessings of God, it all was surrounding, the Israelites. That was the center of the universe. They didn't think too much about everyone else being blessed, even though that was part of the Abrahamic covenant, that nations that bless them would also. But yes, and as we go, when the New Testament rolls around, we get a new idea of how that works, how does what we know about Israel back in the day functioned now.
It's kind of like a family history. You know,
Yeah.
you
A
do
lot
a
of it
family
is.
history of your family, it's important. You know, so it's like your family history.
When you were in school, did they make you memorize who, the presidents in order? Presidents in US order? No.
Yeah. We
The
did.
states.
The states.
States of the capital.
Yeah, the last one.
I will say that this is it's very similar to that. In that, how
I see
often,
why it's important to have a record. But I guess I don't see it's important for us to look at it.
or have to read every word. Well, I can appreciate that, Carolyn. Thank you.
Because we're not.
No. Yeah.
What was your question?
We forgot. An original question that I didn't ask was, God isn't dealing with David's death like he dealt with Moses.
Well, we haven't gotten to David's death yet. So in reality, we don't know, but yeah, David's death is not handled the same way. Now, you just said Moses did.
Yeah.
Why would you say Moses?
Well, I mean, on the basis that God would deal with our patriarchs' death, the same. This is not the same. And I was wondering if this is a passing review for Solomon or what's the context?
I would say you're spot on. We don't get an indication that that's what it is, but in the grand scheme of things, it's definitely what it seems like. Because David got a passing review of something very similar. I think what's happening is David coming to the end of his life. He's preparing Solomon, even though it doesn't say that, but he's preparing his successor. He's getting everything ready for his successor. He knows his life's about to come to an end.
It's kind of like the guy who gets shot on stage and just keeps on dying for a long time.
You mean for the sake of the play?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, not real life. Correct. Yeah. Then sits up and says another line.
Well, I looked ahead a little bit because it talks about.
Of course you did, Anita.
And it does seem kind of anti-climactic. It's 40 years and everything just did, and here's this like little tiny paragraph.
Bear with me. Next week is part 15, and it's the final part of David's life, because the next week after that is going to be First Kings, and we start to get into Solomon. And we don't have these lists of things like that very much until way later. I mean, we will eventually get into some lists of things, and when the people come back from exile, there's a big list of things, but that's going to be next year sometime. So bear with me now for today and for next week, because the week after, September 11, that will be the first part of First Kings, and we get back into the narrative aspect of it. It really takes off. Some very interesting things happen.
It's interesting that First King starts with Solomon. But he wasn't the first king.
Correct.
And even if it wasn't first king, it was all king. I realize, but kings start with Solomon rather than Saul.
The idea, we know that when First and Second Samuel were written, they were just one volume. We know that when First and Second Kings were written, that they were one volume. Although we have no proof at the moment, it is believed by a lot of scholars, I don't want to say the majority, but a lot of scholars, that they were all four of those books, First and Second Samuel, First and Second Kings, were originally all part of one compendium. They were all together and then divided into four different books. But we don't know that. We just know that Samuels were written together and Kings were written together. But the reason they were named such, when you get into Kings, The first Samuel is obviously it's named after Samuel.
Yeah.
Second Samuel is all about David. So first Samuel is all about Samuel and Saul, which was a shorter section than we thought it was, right? And then second Samuel is all about David. It has to do with the first words of the line of the chapters or of the books themselves. So if we were to go and if you were to look in First Kings, I would almost guess that in the first verse the word kings is there.
When King David was over.
So that's how they were was based on the first word. We'll find out today, if you haven't figured it out already, when I preach on Ruth, or in chapter 3, by the way, that the book of Ruth isn't about Ruth. It's about Naomi. So it begins with Naomi, it ends with Naomi, as we'll see next. Ruth just happens to be the vector by which redemption comes in. Anyway, any other questions? You know, if we leave here early, you gotta go to choir.
But Ruth is named the generation,
Oh.
not me.
Mhm. But next week, spoiler alert, next week, if you read ahead into chapter 4, the final chapter there in Ruth, you'll find out that it says that Obed was Naomi's child.
Yeah.
Not even though Ruth gave birth.
Yeah, okay.
And we touch on it a little bit today. So kind of get today is weird because if you've read ahead into Ruth 3, you know, the Bible, there have been a lot of people who complain that there's just as much sex and violence, rock and roll, drugs, stuff in the Bible. This is one of those sex aspects today. But there's a couple of different looks at it, and I'm going with the more simpler view today. We can theologize it all day long. There is this term feet. What does feet mean in Ruth? Many scholars believe, and rightly so, believe that it has to do with the private parts of men. That Jewish writers, when they said feet, sometimes they meant the private parts instead of saying that. Today we're going to go with the simpler view because the word used is not Merohim, is Gedala or something. I won't go into any of that, but it's a different word for feet. And the only other time that word is used is in Daniel.
You're gonna teach us some dirty word?
Kind of. And the use for it in Daniel has to specifically do with feet, not violence. So
I read an article that a school district, I think it was in Texas, maybe not, it was state, banned the Bible in their school library.
Yeah.
Because of sex.
Keller ISD.
Oh, yeah, there's a story of rape.
Because of sex in the Bible that came in.
Murder. I mean, we've been through some of this already. I mean, you know, when Joab was chasing down Abner and spilled his guts, you know, with the knife and all. I mean, that's right out of The Walking Dead. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and close this out, and thank y'all for watching. My mouse to work. There we go.
Glad you pronounced all them names.
Yeah, y'all have fun. See y'all next week.
Yeah.
Close this out. And
We're gonna